All right. Good evening, everyone. I'm James Kitchen. I'm Special Assistant to County Executive Stuart Pittman, and I will be moderating today's webinar. Thank you for joining us for the third webinar in our Engage Arundel webinar series. Winter is coming. Make sure your family and community are prepared. Engage Arundel is designed to foster collaboration and communication between the government and the community. The initiative aims to engage citizens in both online and in-person events, providing them with platforms to voice concerns, share ideas, and work with the county government. Types of engagement include webinars, weekly newsletters, informational sessions, both in-person or online, award ceremonies, summits, community events, social media, online resources, and much more. Goals and benefits include transparency and accountability, increased civic engagement, creating more partnerships and collaborations, and building stronger communities. Before we begin, I'd like to quickly go over some housekeeping items to ensure that the session runs smoothly. So please note that today's webinar is being recorded. If you need to step away or if you'd like to review the content later, we will be sending it out after the event. A copy of the presentation will also be provided. If you have questions during the presentation, please use the Q&A feature located at the bottom of your Zoom screen. We will address as many questions as possible throughout the presentation and during the Q&A at the end of the presentation. So thank you for joining us, and now I'd like to introduce our speaker. Jim Krempel is a retired U.S. Army officer and a lifelong Boy Scout leader. He joined the Anne Arundel County Office of Emergency Management in 2017, serving as the Community Outreach and Volunteer Coordinator. And now it's over to you, Jim.
Thank you, James. Let me share the screen here. And can you see the entire screen?
I can, yes.
Very good. Welcome, everyone. As James said, we're from the Office of Emergency Management. We'll talk to you today about winter weather preparedness. You'll get a recording, but you'll also get a copy of this presentation, and it will have live links that you can drill down to any further information you'd like on your own. So the Office of Emergency Management is a separate public safety agency along with police, fire, and public works. Our mission is to ensure the government and the public are prepared for any emergencies, and we manage response to major emergencies. So think about things like snowstorm, which we'll be talking today, but also hurricanes and man-made emergencies like hazardous materials and active shooters. We coordinate with the county, state, and federal entities. So federal, of course, most of you know about the Federal Emergency Management Agency, FEMA. There's a state agency called the Maryland Department of Emergency Management, and we're the county counterpart. And we maintain partnerships with all the other counties around us, the city of Baltimore, Fort Meade, and the Naval Academy. We have 4 units as shown here. I'm part of the Communications and Outreach unit. I do community outreach and volunteer coordination. So at the end of this, anybody interested in volunteering to be a disaster volunteer, you can reach back through James to reach me, and I will contact you. Shown here is our director, Preeti Emmerich. We work with the entire community, businesses at large and small, industry to include BGE and our hospitals, community and civic associations, faith-based organizations, nonprofit schools, and volunteer organizations. So we're very glad to have you with us today. And you see in the slides to the side some of the emergencies that you respond to. The snowstorm, a tornado, flooding, and of course, COVID. So 4 steps to being prepared for any emergency include being informed, making a plan, building a kit, and get involved. And we'll go through all of these briefly. So if you look at this, you'll see those things that might affect your community or perhaps even your household. At the bottom are things that potential hazards to our county, the entire county, perhaps our nation as well. We have natural hazards, which is primarily weather, and we have man-made hazards broken into intentional, which are primarily criminal or terrorist, and technological, which are things that technology could run away, get out of hand, and then we have to contain those things. So we call all of this all hazards preparedness. So if you as a family or individual prepare for a likely worst case, in this area it might be a major hurricane, you're prepared for almost any emergency. And we'll talk about how to do that during the presentation. Again, if you have any questions, please type them into the question and answer. So we have a number of winter hazards we face in the county and the state here. Nor'easters are a combination of high wind and usually wet and maybe icy weather coming in from the northeast off the Atlantic. We have extreme cold. Does anybody on the call want to guess what the coldest this area has had on the record? You just type it into the Q&A. Give you a couple of seconds. Any takers, James?
No, sir.
Okay, well, the coldest we've had in this area is 9 below zero.
We had one guess right after I said that at -6, so very close.
Very close. Excellent, excellent. And the coldest we've ever had in the state of Maryland, I won't make you guess, is 40 below zero out in Garrett County. That's Alaskan temperature, so it does happen. Snowstorms, we've all had them. The last big one we had was in 2016, but we've had a lot of major snowstorms to include the famous Snowmageddon that we had. A blizzard is not heavy snow. A blizzard is snow blowing in winds of 35 miles an hour or more. And what that creates is whiteout conditions that make driving extremely dangerous. And I think the most dangerous we have are ice storms. Ice storms, if you have a quarter inch or more of ice on the roads, then you not only have the dangerous driving conditions, but they start weighing down the trees. The trees were probably already somewhat ready to uproot. They come falling down, they take down the power lines, and everything else cascades. And that's the kind of cascading effect that can cause a lot of damage to the county. So we ask you to be informed. And one of the best ways to have this is our alert and Arundel system. Alert and Arundel, this county doesn't use sirens. Sirens don't tell anybody anything, and so many people are distracted with earbuds, radios, and everything else that really, those aren't very effective, especially with a very large county like we have. Instead, we have a push system that you can sign up for. It's only used by police, fire, emergency management, public works, and the health department. And we send you all these different information. What makes this different from some of the other systems we have is this actually goes down to neighborhood level. So if there is obviously weather coming, you'll know about that. And you'll know about 15 minutes quicker than if you watch radio and TV. Our weather pushers are sent directly from the weather service to your phone or your cell phone. You can receive these alerts on landline phones, cell phones, in voice and text. And we have email in all of these in English, Spanish, and believe it or not, 18 other language. Our county is becoming very sophisticated, very diverse, and we're trying to meet that challenge. So if English is not your primary language, we'd be glad to help you in another language. It's a totally free service. It's no commercial involvement, and we don't spam you. It could save a life. During the 2020 tornado, we had 150 buildings in the Annapolis area that were either damaged or destroyed. And because of Alert and Arundel, people were warned in advance, and we had 0 casualties of any kind, which is almost unheard of. So we ask you to sign up. Everyone age 12 and above, sign up for this. It might save a life. We also have a number of social media and all of the usual suspects on the left-hand side. Those QR codes when you receive this presentation are live, so you can go ahead and join. We do a number of guidance in there. It's not our warning system, but it's our guidance system. We can give you additional information. We can tell you in advance when things may be coming. We can answer questions, and we can talk about a number of events and training we're doing. In the center there is Pepper the preparedness pup. Pepper is our mascot. She's an actual dog that we've turned into a cartoon. And this is a children's emergency preparedness series that's good for your children, grandchildren, or great-grandchildren. So we have little 1-minute segments that Pepper, as a cartoon, talks about being prepared with all sorts of emergencies. We do that because we're trying to get our kids prepared for emergencies, but also we're trying to reduce their worry and strain if there is an emergency. And you're welcome to do that. This is all tied to our website, which you'll see. And it's also tied to our guide to emergency preparedness. So we try to get everything together so you get a full view of all the kinds of preparedness that you can do as individuals, families, and neighborhoods. So make a plan includes being prepared for winter weather. So you want to limit exposure to extreme cold and wind. Together, they can provide the conditions for hypothermia, where your body gets to a certain temperature and it can't recover. Especially bad is when temperatures drop very quickly if it's wet and windy. Things can change quickly, and what could be a nice brisk walk can turn into a dangerous walk. So we ask you to walk, especially walking or going out in the outside, in pairs, dress in layers, and wear a warm hat and gloves. Most of the heat from your body radiates from your torso and your head. So you also want to wear waterproof boots or shoes. And drink plenty of water. Stay hydrated. You can still get dehydrated in the cold, but we ask you to avoid alcohol, nicotine, and caffeine. All three of them taken in the cold can actually enhance the effect of cold on your body. Avoid icy steps and sidewalk. If anybody's been one of our snowstorms or ice storms, you know what I'm talking about. And the most dangerous thing that you can do is exiting and entering vehicles where you have a sense of actually being in safety, but you could, again, slip and injure yourself. And I remind everybody to get a flu shot or COVID booster to keep the winter diseases in control. If you're over 55, like I am, you can take an RSV or pneumonia booster as well. And those are all available for free from our health department, or usually for a minimum cost or no cost through your local pharmacy and doctor's office.
Hey,
We also
Jim,
talk, yes, go ahead.
before you go on, if we could back up to the alert in Arundel, we have a
Sure,
question.
absolutely.
And it was, when they register for that, are they telling Alert Anne Arundel what their community is or their address to get the local alerts, or will it push, do they need to have the location turned on their phone?
No, they put their address on there so we know what community they're in. We can actually do geofencing and go down to the community level. So if somebody might be working in Pasadena but living up in Baltimore, for example, and we will actually, or vice versa, and actually focus on their neighborhood. And we do dig down to the neighborhood level. Obviously, if it's something widespread like a snowstorm, the entire county will be notified. Does that answer the question?
So when you do the geofencing, does that read like their location through the cell phone, or is it just like the address that they register when they sign up?
It's the address they registered for when they sign up.
Perfect.
So again, we're looking at neighborhood level. Now there's another system called wireless emergency alerts, and that's done from the state, although we can do it at the county level as well. And that's typically how you get your silver alerts and your amber alerts. Those older people that wonder that have cognitive problems, or amber alerts where a child is lost or kidnapped. Those come from the states, and those are pushed to phones that are in the cell range of any given cell tower. Again, that's also geofenced.
Yeah, awesome. I think that answers the question.
So we talk about winter fire safety as well. So December through February are the cause of a lot of home heating fires. And probably the most great cause of that is cooking fires in the kitchen during the holidays and having to do with chimneys and fireplaces. So you want to make sure if you do have a fireplace, have a professional come and check your chimney. Chimney fires are very common and they're very avoidable. As you see here, 1 in every 7 home fires and 1 in every 5 home fire deaths involves some kind of heating equipment. So we ask you to put any kind of space heater at least 3 feet away from any flammables, and that includes furniture and drapes and such. We also, if you have a portable generator, no matter what the size, the fire department asks you to put it at least 15 feet away from a door or window. Further is better. And then if you have and everyone should have a fire alarm, smoke alarm, but you might have a carbon monoxide detector as well. Test those at least once a month. And there's easy ways to test that. And then if you have a heat producing appliance like the space heater, make sure you only plug it into one outlet at a time. If you put that on an extension cord, if you put it on a multi-port outlet, then you're going to have the possibility of generating a lot of overload in heat and cause a fire. And some people, when you empty your fireplace or even your barbecue pits, make sure you put those ashes in a tightly closed fireproof container, at least 10 feet away from your building again. Now I've got a link here. Again, you'll be able to get to that when you get the presentation here, to our fire department. They have a counterpart to my job. It's called a fire safety educator. Her name is Christina. She's a wonderful lady. She will give fire prevention presentations both online, and they have a lot of things on their website, as well as coming to schools and other organizations to give fire safety. And there's a lot more to this, but again, use common sense during the winter. Any questions about that? So during the winter, we also ask you to plan together as a family, or you can take that a step further and plan together as a neighborhood. Understand your family, work, and school emergency plans. Our public school system and our private schools have their own emergency plans and emergency procedures. Identify any special needs your family might have. So you might have an infant or a toddler, older adults, people with access or functional needs, or chronic illness. So you have to think of a number of things for them. Consider prescription medications for them and any special medical equipment they might have. Home healthcare services that you might normally get at home may be interrupted during a winter storm. So you have to consider that in advance and plan for it. If they use supplemental oxygen or other kinds of devices like a CPAP or an LVAD, then you have to think of the availability of the supplies and the electricity. So call your supplier in advance and see how they can deliver in advance of the storm. And if they have an urgent medical appointment, anyone in your family, like chemotherapy or dialysis, make sure and call your provider in advance and see if they'll be open, if they have other alternatives for you as far as locations or plans. In some cases, they can put off the treatment during the storm itself and then do it afterward. If you have to go to a urgent medical appointment, then consider transportation. If somebody has an access or functional need, perhaps they can't drive. They might rely, for example, on a home health care. If the home health care provider isn't available and the transportation is needed, then you can figure that out. Or you can call us at the emergency management office and we can get you public transportation through the county. Talk about what you would want to do if directed to shelter in place or evacuate. So shelter in place is something that might do during an active shooter, for example. Evacuate is something you might do during a flood when your home might be in danger. And we will give you guidance on both of those through Alert and Arundel. And then share and practice your emergency plan with your family. Practice that and then update it as necessary. Make sure it includes kids and grandkids. Our children are pretty smart, but again, we want them to be not afraid of emergencies, but working together with the family to do that. And you'll see the link we have to ready.gov, which is a federal emergency management agent site that has a lot of good information for this. And again, all these links are live when you get the PDF version of this, and you can get as much information as you like. Any questions about this? So we also talk about making a communications plan. So write down in advance critical contact information you have. Family members, doctors, pharmacies, bankers, insurance, close friends, because in an emergency, we might not be able to rely on our cell phone system to retain that information. Have an extra cell charger and a power bank, which you can carry that'll give you a boost for a number of extra emergency calls. Identify who you'd like to notify that you're safe in an emergency. Now, Facebook has an I'm okay feature that you can actually click a button and tell your friends and family on Facebook that you're okay in an emergency. But not many people subscribe to Facebook these days, and that system might not work. So a way you can do that is designate what we call a family switchboard operator. That's somebody that you trust. It could be a friend or family member that can relay information about you being safe to all the others in the network that you set up. So I was at the Pentagon during 9/11, and our voicemail went out very quickly on our cell phones. It was simply overloaded. So text messages are based on short message system, and they will get through usually when a voice call fails. And all you have to tell people is who you are, where you are, and the fact that you're safe. If you send that to your switchboard operator, then they can relay that to the rest of your friends, family, or group. And then you can determine how you might communicate if you lose cell service or the internet. Believe it or not, plain old telephone system that you plug into the wall still works. It's a totally separate 90-volt system that's pretty resilient. You might use radios. They have the small portable radios you can buy inexpensively. You might have amateur radio, or you can even use couriers in a neighborhood. Have people walk house to house and spread information and keep everybody informed. And finally, select an emergency meeting place for your family or your friends. So if for some reason you're separated, you can meet in a common area that you both trust. It might be a church. It might be a mall that's still open. It could be a fire station. It might even be the police stations. So there's, again, a link here for communications plan. That includes a guide that you can download and print for your family. And then consider evacuations, a voluntary evacuation in advance of the storm if you live alone and have a disability or chronic illness, if you have insufficient heating, or if you use electrically powered life-saving equipment and have no generator. So you want to move to a place of safety that has steady electricity and may be out of the area. And the old adage of two heads are better than one is absolutely true in any emergency. If there are two people, you can advise each other, you can share resources, and if one person has an accident, the other can support them. And consider residents with special needs. And you see this list here that we've gone over some of those already, but they may have some assistive devices or mobility devices that they would have to bring with them if they do evacuate. They may have service animals, and of course, a service animal is a part of their actual emergency plans, and they're trained to be with that individual. You have to consider timing, what they need to pack, and the transportation. As I mentioned before, a caregiver might not be available, so they may need alternate transportation. If they're going somewhere, think about the destination to where they're going. And if it's a hotel, ask in advance if pets will be accepted. In most places, service animals are accepted, but pets, companion animals, may not be accepted.
Hey,
And
Jim, we've got
again,
another question.
yes, sure.
So for the severe weather alerts, so we had someone write in that they already received severe weather alerts. Does that mean they're already connected for alerts, or do they also have to sign up for the separate alert system for Anne Arundel County where they live?
So the emergency alert system and the weather wireless emergency alerts will send some weather alerts at a certain threshold. Alert Anne Arundel sends them at a lower threshold, meaning you'll find out sooner, and it's a much broader level of emergencies, not just weather alerts. But the others are pushed to you. So if you're in the area that's in a zone that would receive that, you'll get it. Whereas if you're signed up for Alert Anne Arundel, you'll guarantee to get it on your phone. I think that answers the question.
Yeah, thank you.
So the county operates warming centers during cold weather and cooling centers during hot weather. Our senior activity centers, our public libraries, and our police district stations are open during their business hours. And when they're activated, our police district station community rooms are open overnight. Now, the police stations, and none of these are actually shelters. So if you're looking to actually camp out somewhere and have a long-term shelter, these provide restrooms, comfortable places to stay. In the winter, they provide heating. They do not provide nursing services or anything else. So you'd have to call 911 for that. However, if you do need a shelter, if you're homeless or facing homelessness, you can call our crisis warm line at the number shown. A great number to write down for anything, 410-768-5522. Our crisis intervention team is one of the best in the nation. In fact, it was actually voted the #1 in the world a couple of years in a row. So we're very fortunate to have them. And they can intervene with any kind of crisis. So it might be a sheltering, it might be some kind of a suicide crisis, it might be substance abuse. You or your family might not have that problem, but you may know somebody that does. And this is a resource we urge everybody to use. And again, if you go the website there on warm, you'll see where we have the warming centers when they're activated. And that's always posted and updated through the county website. Any questions so far? So we talk about doing a shelter in place kit. So we say shelter in place or hunker down in your home for at least 3 days. Now, 3 days, it'll be as long as it would take to get to you in a worst case. So a large snowstorm or a large flood, for example, until we might be able to reach you and plow to your area. Usually it's a lot faster than that, but we give you the safe siding. So we ask you to become self-sufficient. If you don't have the wherewithal to build all of this, then you can build it a little time and share expenses with a friend or neighbor. And that could be the person that you work with during the emergency. As you look down this list, you'll say you have most of this at home, and that's true. But do you necessarily not put it together in advance? So put it in your sheltered area, which might be a basement, or during tornado season, maybe a bathroom or closet, interior closet. And this gives you enough to, again, last for 3 days. Now, 1 gallon of water per person per day is what's recommended. That is for drinking and cooking, not necessarily for bathing. And that's easily gained by a regular 19-ounce bottle of water. A case of that is 3 gallons. So you buy a case of water for each person in your family, and they can just drink through it. That water will last as long as it's not open, essentially indefinitely. But we recommend you drink through it about every 6 months if you don't open it. Once you've opened it, you need to consume it. Also have water on hand for your pets. So if you have a dog or cat, make sure you have a case of water for them. They may not use all of it, but it becomes a spare for you as well. For food, you have that at least 3-day supply of non-perishable foods. That includes your pets again. And non-perishable is anything that doesn't melt or go bad in a power outage. So again, if we have a major snowstorm or in the summer a flood or hurricane, it's possible that the power will go out. If you have an infant, make sure you have baby formula and diapers. And you can get a hand crank radio, but believe it or not, they still have small handheld AM/FM radios. to get extra batteries. That'll keep you attuned to what's going on, even if other systems don't work. We mentioned the cell phone with a charger before, and a power bank, which you can plug into to get an extra boost. Flashlight or headlamp with extra batteries, and have one each per person in your family to include children over age 5. Do not use uh, candles. A lot of people use candles because they smell good, they're festive. But if you're isolated and we can't get to you, you don't want to increase the possibility of a fire that we can't necessarily give you rescue for immediately. Have a family first aid kit. And we ask you to look at that first aid kit and get trained in it. The Office of Emergency Management offers free training in first aid, in cardiopulmonary resuscitation and AED, and in Stop the Bleed. Stop the Bleed is our newest course. We can arrange that for your civic group, your school, your church, whatever group you might have, and it's given free. Make sure you have prescription medicine. We recommend for those that have chronic illnesses, have 30 days supply on hand. And again, have extra medical devices such as glasses and hearing aids and batteries to go with them. Have personal hygiene items. That would include mask and gloves during COVID. COVID is still with us. Have photo identifications and important documents. You can carry that in a small safe or even in a waterproof bag. That way, if you have to evacuate, you'll have a copy of that. And we have a whole document and series on doing that if you'd like to know, if you have more information. We ask you to have a whistle to signal for help. During Hurricane Katrina, they had 18 saves because people were able to whistle from their attics when they were trapped. They were too tired to yell, but they actually used a whistle. They're inexpensive. And again, we talk about non-perishable foods. If you talk about canned goods, you want to have a manual can opener. Some people have only electric can openers, and during a power outage, those are only good to be a paperweight. So you don't want that. And have extra blankets and such if you need them. A wrench or plier to turn off utilities if that's required. And yes, you have cash and traveler's checks if needed. Yes, traveler's checks are still actually available. And the reason we have that is our ATM machines may be down, both electrically and their satellite systems may be down. So if you need cash, if you have to leave the area, or our gas systems may be out so you can't fuel your car, you want to have a little extra cash. A long list, common sense items, but build it in advance. The last thing you want to do is go to a Giant or Safeway or Food Lion a day before a hurricane or a snowstorm. There will be nothing on the shelves, as we all experienced. Any questions about this?
So I've got a couple questions,
Good.
probably back up to the last slide or so. But first of all, are there any shelters from a storm that allow citizens to bring pets if they're secured in a carrier?
Okay, that's a double question. So most likely during a winter storm, a snowstorm, we'll never open a shelter. But the county does have provisions for mass care shelters during major storms like a hurricane, for example, or a large tropical storm. Some of those may be designated for pets in a carrier, and the individual who owns the pet is responsible for their upkeep. We'll work with the Office of Animal Care and Control, as well as some of our volunteers to do that if we open that. We open a shelter only very, very, very rarely, and that's only when an area is really impacted enough that people have to leave their homes and go to a shelter. We recommend for any, as we said before, if you need to voluntarily leave early and go to a place of your choice where you can be comfortable and you know your pet will be taken care of. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Any other
All right.
questions?
And then secondly, back to emergency alerts, we actually have a question about how someone could block emergency alerts so that they don't get messages like silver alerts overnight while they're sleeping and they don't want to wake up.
Okay, so the silver and amber alerts are sent by the state, and they come through active cell towers in your area. So again, they can't be turned off. You can always opt out of our system, Alert and Arundel. But the silver and amber alerts come from the state, and they're sent as broadcasts. And if you're in the range of a cell tower that gets that, you'll get the broadcast. So I recommend either thing, if you don't want to be bothered, either shut your phone off or put it on silent where it just vibrate. Because again, those are from the state or even the federal government, and those are pushed to you. They're not a subscription system.
All right. Thank you.
Sure. But I would mention that why it might be irritating. Uh, I'll give you an example. A tornado at night is one of the most dangerous things that you can face, because if it's storming and it's dark at night, you're not going to see or hear a tornado. The warning that you get through your warning alert system may be the only warning you have to get to shelter. just advice during certain situations. So we take the shelter in place for your family, and this applies whether your family is you and one pet or your family is you and extended family with 10 kids. So these, sorry, wrong direction. So we have a personal go bag, which is the same idea, and it's for an individual that may be isolated for 24 hours in an office, school, or car, or you need it during an emergency evacuation to include a fire. So if you need to leave the home at night in a fire, you have this information and this equipment available for you. Very simple bag. You can go online and buy these for $150 if you want to, but none of these need to cost very much. Most of these are things you have. They're easy to assemble. Put them in a backpack or a book bag, and even children can assemble them for school and keep them in their lockers at school. It's just some common sense things. In this case, this gentleman's run off the road. The most important thing we have in that case would be a cell phone and have that extra power bank so you can call 911 to get some help there. And you see, most of this is pretty straightforward. Again, when I was at the Pentagon in 9/11, we had these go bags, and we were very glad to have them. It got us through the emergency through about 24 hours till we could get home. Any questions about this? Again, this is all in the guide that I will share with you in just a second. So again, all this information is available, and you can create this for your own situation, your own needs, and your own family. I'll wait a second for questions.
I don't see any.
So if you are planning to travel during the winter, we ask you to winterize your vehicle before the first winter storm, whether it's snow or ice. And there's a whole list of things in our book that you can see it about winterizing your car. Keep your gas tank at least half full. That's actually a good measure at all times. You never know when an emergency might happen. Every vehicle should have an emergency supply kit with some of the items we show here. And then check those kits every 6 months and replace expired items. So the water, some of the first aid supplies, the non-perishable foods may be either going stale or have been there a long time, and replace them. So most of these are very common things. Sand or kitty litter in a bag is something you can use for traction if you get stuck in the snow or ice. And of course, you have some extra clothing if you need the warmth there. And the most of the other stuff you will put with your go bag that you might have. You'll be prepared for almost anything. And when you're driving, remember, if in ice and snow, take it slow. Emergency management loves different kinds of slogans that we have. Like in floods, we say, turn around, don't drown. Well, ice and snow, take it slow. So please check the weather forecast before you're traveling. Whether you're going to run to the grocery store or go to Aunt Mabel's in the next county or the next state. In a winter warning, if there's a winter weather warning, avoid travel at all costs if you can possibly do it. Clear your vehicle windows and roof before you leave the house. That not only makes it safe for you, but it keeps the ice and snow from blowing off and blinding others. Stay alert. Keep a close eye on the road conditions that can change very quickly. Drive much slower than normal and leave room between you and surrounding cars. Do not use cruise control. Do not brake quickly or do not make sharp turns. You don't know what's icy. And we say don't crowd the plow. That means you want to stay in the road behind an active plow. It's safer than driving on the side of the plow. And they will occasionally slow down so you can pass them. Always wear your seatbelt and ensure everyone in your vehicle does the same. And make sure young children are in car seats. That's not just a snowstorm tip. That's a 24/7, every day of the year tip. Remember that winter driving is already inherently dangerous, especially if there's ice on the road. So please don't text or make phone calls, speed, or drive under the influence of alcohol or drugs. That just compounds a dangerous problem. If you are in an accident, pull your vehicle off the road if possible and use your hazard flashers or flares or reflectors in your emergency kit to warn other drivers. Then dial 911 and wait for the police to arrive. And again, there's a link here that you can learn a lot more about this. It's also in our guide that we will tell you about. Any questions so far? Moving on, think about your pets as well. So if you're cold, your pets are cold as well. So If there a winter storm approaching, if you get and that you know the difference between a watch and a warning. So watch means the conditions are possible for a winter storm. A warning means it actually has either been spotted or is imminent on the way to you. So if a winter storm watch or warning is going, or if the temperatures go below 32, then bring your pets inside if you possibly can. Now, per our county code, during severe weather emergencies, we have what's called a severe weather animal alert when temperatures go below 32. If a pet, especially a dog, is left unattended outside, it must have a dog house with no interior metal surfaces that could really freeze, and something that protects the animals against wind, snow, and cold, raised 2 inches off the ground so they're not on the cold ground. It requires dry bedding or a resting board. You put a board they can lay on inside the doghouse, and fresh, clean, drinkable, non-frozen water at all times in a non-tip bowl. If that water tips, then the water will freeze and the animal again will not have availability to water. And of course, keep it fed at all times. The best answer, if they are an in-dog pet, bring your dogs inside. Cats typically stay inside, so they're usually covered. Now remember that the salt and chemicals that are used to melt the ice and snow can irritate a pet's paws and mouth, and taken enough, it can actually make them ill. So make sure and remove the material that they might get from being outside from their paws, so they don't lick their paws and then get sick. And one last thing for pet preparedness: antifreeze, believe it or not, is an absolute deadly poison. It smells bad to us, but for some reason it's very tasty to dogs, and we lose a lot of dogs during the winter. So if you have antifreeze, please keep it locked up or keep it high enough where your dog can't get to it. I don't say cats because typically they're not interested in it, but dogs do like the taste for whatever reason. We talk about our Department of Public Works. These are real heroes during the winter. They have about 1,600 miles of road to plow across the county. Now, of course, always in an emergency where there's a threat of life or rescue, call 911. But the Highways Bureau has now 2 different websites you can use. The snow information site, which is shown there, talks about their snow priorities and how they tackle snow. And now they have a snowplow tracker where you can actually see where all the snowplows are. So you can see if your if your community is about to be plowed. If there's a snowfall up to 4 inches or general road issues, you can call the 3 road districts at those numbers. Those are 24/7 numbers. So if you have a problem on the roads, if you see a pothole, or if you have light snowfall, you can call them. If snowfall is over 4 inches or there's a major ice storm, then we'll go ahead and operate the County Emergency Operations Center in Glen Burnie, and that's operated by our Office of Emergency Management. And there's our number. That's also our main number that you can reach during the days. And by the way, that number is available in the evenings and after hours as well. It will roll over to the fire department in that case. You can call that number for shelter or emergency transportation or non-emergency assistance. Again, call 911 if it's a life-threatening emergency. And the Department of Public Works will open a storm center, and there's a number there if the snowfall is over 4 inches or we get a major ice storm. Now, numbered highways and our interstate highways are covered by the Maryland Highway Administration, part of our Department of Transportation, and there are their 2 contact numbers. Those are 24/7 numbers as well. So with those websites and these numbers, you can pretty much keep on top of what the winter weather situation is like. And if you want to see in fact, there's a level of service on the DPW highways website. You can actually put in your address and see what level of service you're going to get during a winter storm. Any questions about this? Our Department of Works has an excellent presentation on this as well. This usually brings questions. I'll wait a second.
Yeah, I don't see any.
So expect power outages during a major storm. So we ask you to notify BGE of your neighborhood outages. They know of area outages, but they appreciate being informed of neighborhood outages. That's the number you can call. It's a toll-free number. Or if you still have connectivity through the internet, you can go to that web address. You'll see at that web address where all the outages are and the anticipated restoration times. You can also file a report there. We said before, use flashlights or battery-powered lanterns. I like lanterns because you can, I like the headlamps. You can put them on your hands, keep your hands free to do what you need to do, and make sure and have extra batteries. Have one flashlight, headlamp, or lantern per person in your family. Charge your cell phones or your radio in advance with rechargeable batteries. And if you know there's going to be a long power outage, this is particularly true for tropical storms, but also could happen for the 3 days that it might take to restore your power for a winter storm. So your refrigerators and freezers are set at maximum cold and keep the doors closed. Now, I haven't given a lot of questions here because it's kind of awkward to do the chat, but I'll give you this one. Can anybody guess typically how long the food in a refrigerator is during a power outage? So type in the chat what your guess might be. How long is perishable food in a refrigerator good for?
I've got a 4 days, 48 hours. Any other takers?
So believe it or not, we've seen time and time again that it's good for only about 4 hours, most especially if you have children in the home. It's very easy to go in and out of that refrigerator. You want to drink, you want to grab something out of that. Uh, and typically they don't stay that cold that long in a full power outage. Obviously, if you're very self-disciplined, it's only one of you, it might last a lot longer. Whoever guessed 48 hours was correct for a deep freeze. So the freezer side of your refrigerator freezer or standalone freezer can stay safe for 48 hours because that is maximum cold and there are other frozen items around it, as long as you keep the doors closed. What we say is don't take chances with any of these foods. You don't want to have food poisoning on top of everything else when we can't reach you in an emergency. And we've mentioned this before, but it's very important. If somebody has electrically powered medical equipment and you don't have a generator, please go to a place that has steady power source. If you have a home generator, make sure it's properly installed by a professional, that it's well fueled and it's located in areas safe to operate at least 15 feet from a home. And believe it or not, we have to give this warning. Do not burn charcoal or use gasoline machinery or a propane powered stove inside the house. People do this either to stay warm or to power something. It's extremely dangerous for a fire, but it creates carbon monoxide, which can kill very easily. And again, we don't want to compound the problem where you're already stuck at home in a snowstorm or an ice storm by creating something dangerous in your house. Any questions about that? So after the storm, the first thing you do is confirm that yourself and your family members are safe. And I would say in general, make sure that the first priority for being safe is you personally. Now, I'm not being selfish or you're not being selfish when we say that. As they say on an airplane, if that oxygen mask drops down, even if there's a baby next to you, put that mask on yourself first. Then you can take care of the baby, in this case, other family members. So if you aren't safe and something happens to you, you aren't available to help others, and you become a victim that somebody has to take care of. Don't travel unless it's absolutely necessary after a storm. The roads are slick. There may be a lot of traffic hazards, as you see here. So you have to use extreme caution. And again, we mentioned icy sidewalks and driveways. My wife actually broke her leg a few years ago coming out to the car. The most dangerous time is coming down the front steps, get to your stoop and step out to the car. Check on your neighbors, especially older adults or people with chronic illness or access and functional needs. They may need some extra help. If you have downed trees, check on them, but make sure if there are down power lines that you treat them as energized. Don't take a chance because they still may be able to energized. Call 911 or call BGE. Then you can assess any property damage you might have. Take photos for any insurance claim you might have. In fact, we recommend taking before and after photos. So make a thorough inventory of your house, interior and exterior. Take photos so that you can compare when you make the claim. If you suspect structural damage, go ahead and find shelter elsewhere. Obviously, if you think that the house is structurally unsound and you need a rescue, call 911 and they'll obviously come out and take care of you. And again, we talk about if in doubt, throw it out for refrigerated food. Don't get sick. Don't shovel snow if you have a chronic illness, especially some kind of cardiac disease, and then take frequent breaks while you're doing it. And please know how to safely use a chainsaw. You don't want to be the first snowstorm or ice storm of the year, the first time you use that chainsaw. Again, you're compounding the problem by making yourself in greater danger. And then park in your driveway and keep the curb clear for snowplows. This is especially true on a cul-de-sac. so that they have a very limited area that they can go around and clear. And if you're out on the in the lane there, they can't clear the area. And in general, as we said before, expect to be self-sufficient on your own, hunkered down, sheltered in place for up to 3 days. Any questions about that? We're almost at the end.
So I've got one question or comment. It says some people still have landlines and don't know they have battery power that lasts only several hours. Um, can you speak to that?
Well, actually, landlines have a 90-volt system that can actually last quite a bit longer. It's a lot more robust system than cells are. They're not as flexible, but they are available. You have to be very careful, though, if you have a landline, there's two different kinds. So one is you actually plug it into the wall like an old-fashioned phone. Those are still available. So it takes its power from the plug in the wall. That's the 90-volt system. But if you have an electric powered landline, which I think the caller is referring to, that's where you have a cordless phone that operates on batteries, and it'll only last for a certain amount of time, or in some cases it won't last at all if not powered. I think I answered that.
Yeah, thank you.
So again, get involved. The fact you're on this call means you are interested and involved, and you're trying to improve the preparedness for your family and neighborhood. So participate in community meetings. The whole series that Dr. Kitchen's talking about is a wonderful opportunity to learn about all the services the county provides and ask a million questions. Make sure to include family, friends, children, and neighbors in the emergency plans, and go ahead and practice together. We call this whole community preparedness. We all work together. Check on vulnerable neighbors. We mentioned that before. And you can take a CPR, AED, first aid, or stop the bleed class. For those that don't know, Stop the Bleed is a course that we give. It came out of active shooter events where somebody was wounded during the active shooter events, and during the 3 to 5 minutes till EMS gets there, they hemorrhaged out. So we're teaching hemorrhage control now to citizens. And that all three of these courses are an hour and a half apiece, and we can arrange this for free for your civic association, for your community association, for your church, for even for your company, and we're happy to do that. You can request a community or house of worship planning discussion, and we'll tell you how to be prepared for that. The community discussion talks about resources you have in your community and how to set up your own response team, and we can help you with that too. And then we're very lucky to have about 22 different agencies that are disaster volunteers. So as I mentioned early on, if anybody's interested in becoming a disaster volunteer for the county, we'd love to hear from you. We have a group called the Anne Arundel County Annapolis Community Emergency Response Team, CERT or CERT. AAA CERT has its own website. It's got a link there. At a minimum, they give you advanced emergency preparedness training. And it includes a number of things like basic firefighting, basic search and rescue, how to safe a scene, how to give basic first aid. If you want to, after taking that course, then you can take a background check and actually volunteer to work with the county as a disaster volunteer. They have a number of specialized teams. They have first aid teams. They have a rescue team. They have animal control teams. They have our emergency operations center call teams. So it's a lot of ways that you can actually get involved in disaster response and recovery. And then volunteer. Volunteer at your church, volunteer with your company, volunteer in the community. We have 47 food banks in the community, and that actually expanded after COVID. So we're always looking for volunteers. In general, stay situationally aware. Be aware of your surroundings. If you see something, say something. So if you see something that's untoward, or if you smell what you think is gas, natural gas leak, call 911. Let the professionals handle it. As long as it's made in good faith, you will never go wrong in calling and having that checked out. Get out of the danger zone, call 911. And as I mentioned before, get those annual shots that you need, or boosters that you need, vaccines that you need, especially if you're over 55, another level of prevention and protection. And again, by the fact you're on this call, it means you are involved and you're setting the example.
Hey, Jim, are there minimum or maximum sizes for those classes, like the first aid, CPR, AED, stop the bleed classes?
That is a wonderful question. So we also offer civilian active shooter training, or called craze training, and that's an hour and a half, and there's no limit on that. It's just given in person. These three are very much hands-on courses, and the typical limit is 10 students per instructor. Now, if a group is larger than that, we can arrange to have more than one instructor, but typically it's a 10-to-1 ratio. And that usually fits very well to a house of worship emergency team or a community emergency team, that sort of thing. So that's a great question. All of our training's free.
Are there minimum sizes? Like, can you do it two people or three people or?
Well, yes, we can, but typically we'll get a small group together and set up a time and location where other people can join us. And in fact, we're doing one this week for Arundel on the Bay down in the Annapolis area. And they actually took our community emergency planning. They have a community team, and we're actually training that team and then other neighbors. And they're getting all three of our classes, all four of our classes with active shooter training. All of that's free. They've become informed their own emergency response team. And that's something we can certainly talk to people about as well. So we've given you a lot of information. James has recorded this, and we're going to give you a PDF copy of this presentation with live links. You can either go to the websites or click on the websites, and it'll have a lot more information. But we also put together one guide that captures almost everything we've talked about today for any emergency. It's available in English, Spanish, and Korean, and it's called, In Case of Emergency, My Guide to Emergency Preparedness. And you can click here and get a digital version of it. Or if you like, you can write our office and we can actually send you a version. We also come to a lot of different kind of community engagements, especially in the fall and spring. We always have booths set up out there, and you can come by the booth, talk to one of our experts, and get some of these guides and some of our other materials that we have. We ask you to do one thing before we leave today and take a picture of this QR code and give us a evaluation of the presentation. We want to always help to improve what we give to our citizens. Now, I've talked a lot. If anyone in the code on the call, and James, if you don't mind, they can unmute themselves and ask a question or follow up. Do they have that capability?
Yeah, let me see. I think if someone were to raise their hand, I could allow you to talk. If you press the raised hand function.
Or
Um,
of course, you can also do you can use the question and answer as well.
Absolutely. Any questions or comments? So I've got one in the Q&A. Do you do any work with non-EMS agencies such as the National Ski Patrol?
So I mentioned that we don't use that specific one, especially here. Other parts of the country do, but we have 22 nonprofit agencies. They're either non-governmental, nonprofit, or faith-based organizations that do disaster support. And we'll be very, very happy to send information to anyone that might be interested in being a disaster volunteer. And that includes, by the way, our county fire department as a volunteer firefighter. And I
Right.
urge everyone on the call to also reach out, and we gave you the link there to our fire educator. She has a very good presentation. In fact, our CERT team also does the same presentation on home firefighting skills, and they actually have a demonstration. And a lot of people have never used a fire extinguisher. So they'll train you how to use a fire extinguisher hands-on. They have an electronic device that simulates a fire and lets you put out safely a fire without obviously having a fire. Now, if you take the CERT training, the actual in-person training, they actually build a fire and you knock down a real fire. Any other questions?
We have one comment just saying excellent and thank you. But any other questions? All right. I do not see any. So I'm just going to thank everyone for joining us for this webinar today as part of Engage Arundel. Thank you, Jim, for presenting. And then plan to join us for our next webinar is going to be with the budget officer, Chris Trumbauer. We're starting to get into budget season, so we will talk about that whole process and how you and your communities can be involved. This is tentatively scheduled as a lunchtime session on December 18th, but we will send out a formal invitation for that shortly. So be on the look for that. But I look forward to seeing you there and enjoy the rest of your evening.
Thank you all. Have a nice evening.